Otto Healthcare Center Nursing Home is under an NLRB order to rehire and pay tens of thousands of dollars in back pay to 5 workers in California. They were organizing at local of the National Union of Healthcare Workers, NUHW, when they were fired just 2 days before an NLRB union representation election. Despite the firings and an intense anti-union campaign, the workers at Novato won their election in 2015, but they have yet to win their first collective bargaining contract. Richard Draper is an NUHW organizer.
These are just very remarkable people who take care of some of the most vulnerable people in our society, are wanting to just be treated with respect. That's why they decided to join our union. They don't make a lot of money, and these folks stay at this facility because they care about these residents. And for the employer to violate their rights, to treat them how they have, is just pretty despicable.
Draper says these workers had to endure an intimidation campaign from Novato management simply to exercise their legal rights to form a union.
The facility became a real war zone for almost 2 months during the organizing campaign. This is another example of where, at some point in our country, we need to focus on strengthening labor laws, especially the laws that protect workers when they act collectively, because it's not strong enough. The penalties for employers should be much more severe because there's not enough fight to the law. Too many employers violate it.
Novato has appealed the NLRB ruling reinstating the fired workers, but Draper says these workers will prevail in asserting their legal rights to organize.
For WIN, I'm Joanne Powers. Members of the nation's largest union of charter school educators announced Friday that they have voted overwhelmingly to merge with the Chicago Teachers Union. The Chicago Alliance of Charter Teachers and Staff, Local 4343 of the American Federation of Teachers, represents 1,000 teachers at 32 of the city's charter schools. CTU's 30,000 members are expected to vote this fall. Chris Barrand is president of Local 4343.
Our vote represents the fact that charter teachers are educators of the public. We face the same challenges that district schools face: budget cuts, privatization, lack of accountability, and we feel that uniting our power with district teachers is the way that all Chicago teachers can fight for what our students deserve. We've been working with them for a long time. There's been a lot of support between us, so I'm hopeful that we're able to stand together as one local to defend the students and the working families we serve.
Barrand feels that the CTU and Local 4343 have much in common.
Risking their own livelihood in order to defend their schools and their students. That's the kind of militancy to be admired. Our members have had 3 overwhelming strike authorization votes this past year. In all 3 of those cases, the employer gave us everything we wanted. Why? Because it was reasonable what we asked. But we had to show that we were willing to shut down the schools in order for them to do what was reasonable with taxpayer dollars.
WIN is made possible in part by the OPEIU, the Office and Professional Employees International Union. You've been listening to WIN, Workers' Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I could drag it into the bathroom and drown in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead, make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a week it was last week. This week proves to be just as exciting. And look, Tuesday's coming. Another hearing. And I got to be honest, there's a part of me that pines for the days where Senate hearings were something relegated just to C-SPAN. and only us political junkies were, paying any attention to it whatsoever. Every week there's a new kind of political Super Bowl that just, well, I got to be honest, it's weird, it's scary, it is what it is. And look, I look at the statement by Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, over the weekend on Deface the Nation. He said, you may be the first president in history to go down because you can't stop inappropriately talking about an investigation that, if you were just quiet, would clear you. And I think that's kind of one of those things that you go, yeah, that sums up Trump pretty good. Because look, I don't think him and Putin are holding hands. But I think a lot of the people around him were. So the more he keeps throwing stuff out, the more he keeps tweeting, the more he keeps talking about it, the more he keeps adding fuel to the fire, the more those around him will be under scrutiny. And look, every Democratic senator and a lot of the Republicans are coming around to, there's something here. And it's only going to get worse. And now you've got people, because again, you had Trump, throwing out they're threatening Comey with, there may be tapes. Just hope there aren't tapes. Now you got people going, we want the tapes. And you had better produce some tapes. Because here's the thing. Now the question is, he threw that out there. And now everybody, including me, goes, there got to be tapes. Because we've all seen The West Wing, and we've all seen, what was that other stupid show, Scandal? We've all seen these presidential shows where, you got to step out of the light because the cameras are recording everything in the Oval Office. We expect everything that happens in the Oval Office to have a video camera on it, to document. And the fact that, maybe there is, maybe there isn't, is going to have a lot of people questioning, I want the tapes. That simple. Now, the weekend was interesting with a bunch of different quotes and a bunch of people throwing out. You had Ivanka Trump on fake news saying that there's a level of viciousness that I wasn't expecting in D.C. And you go, really? Your father led the viciousness for, the better part of the Obama years. Do you think Sasha and Malia understood the viciousness that their father was being attacked for 8 years by people like your father? Do you get that? And the answer is no. Because I love these people who, they're pointing the finger. And as my grandfather always said, when you point one, they're three pointing back at you. Because look, this is the stuff they've been doing all along. So I find it amazing when Republicans are going, Democrats are obstructing. When Trump goes, the Democrats have nothing but obstruction. Going, wait a second. Did you have amnesia for the Obama years? Were you on a separate planet? Did someone tie you up and hold you in a closet somewhere? Really? And the answer is, well, when we were doing it, we were defending America. We were right. Yeah, Obama's a Muslim. Yes. Born in Kenya. Yes, you're right, Donald. And the sad thing is we elected this guy president. I shouldn't say we, because I didn't. And 3 million more people voted for Hillary Clinton. So there is that. John McCain also had an interesting little tidbit in The Guardian on Sunday. There was all the rage on Twitter because he pointed out what I think all of us know. On the international stage, President Obama was much better liked, was much stronger, was much better with our allies. It just seemed, duh. It's one of those things where you go, really? Anyway, he was asked, which president was better for the international community. And of course, McCain said, well, Obama. That's simple. He said, look, you don't have somebody going after the London mayor after a terrorist attack. He goes, what do you think the message is? The message is that America doesn't want to lead. He said, when it goes on to say over the rest of the international community, they're not sure of America's leadership, whether it's going to be in Siberia or whether it's Antarctica. And, the reality is he's concerned about American leadership. And you look at Trump, who really and he points this out using the S word along with show, said that the speech, the NATO speech, where he basically, in front of the 9/11 memorial, just chastises all of these other world leaders. And you go, really? Was that the best thing? McCain said that was a giant S, a total S show. So there you go. Anyway, today on CBS this morning, you had, and this is one of those things that's just weird to me, because all of this talk about Russia is bringing out interesting characters from all sides of the political spectrum, saying, well, maybe Russia's not a bad thing, because evidently Oliver Stone sat down and did a bunch of interviews with Vladimir Putin, which will be available, I think, on HBO. And the quote that grabbed me is you had Stone saying that, Putin believes in talk. He believes in being peaceful. He's a peaceful statesman. And he said for the whole 2 years that he did these interviews, I've never heard him badmouth anybody. And you go, no, he doesn't badmouth anyone. He just has them killed. There's a huge difference there, Ali. And here's the weird thing. I mean, this is the weird thing, because there's a lot here with this Russia stuff. And I know on the right, you've got the RNC and the RNC chairwoman who are saying, Donald's been vindicated. There's nothing there. There's no collusion. That's not what Comey said. Not at all what was said. But you've got, on their sports sides, you've got the far right going, he's perfectly innocent, fresh and clean as the driven snow. And on the far left, you got people going, impeach now. And I'm going, I'd like to know what Russia did so that next election they don't get to do it again. And the election after that, again and again. I think there's a moment where you go, okay, let the team sport people have their little back and forth, but the rest of us need to know if our elections are rigged. Because there's actually talk, and I was told from the beginning, you can't hack the voting machines. We're now finding out, maybe you can hack the voting machines. Maybe you can go in and change the votes. And I had a bunch of people sending me, did you know Detroit had more votes than they had voters? Yeah, I would like to know how that happened. Wouldn't you? Yes, I would. So we do need to have an investigation. Was it because, like in Ohio, the voting safeguards were turned off? Don't know. Would like to find out. Thinks it's a good idea. But here's the weird thing. And if you're watching the chess pieces moving around on the board, you're seeing Trump being boxed in. He's not going to say a bad word about Russia. The international community is turning against him because our allies are going, we better figure something out if they're crazy. And you see headlines, Republicans refuse to back Trump attack Comey. And you go, well, when's the impeachment coming? And it's not going to come yet. And I said from the very beginning, and you'll remember, it's going to be the Republicans who impeach Donald Trump. It's not going to be the Democrats. They don't have the power. The Democrats can only save Trump. And you go, what? Really? I mean, because understand, Trump was talking what the people who supported him wanted to hear, which was more government intervention, big infrastructure programs, government intervening into the quote-unquote free market to level off trade and bring back manufacturing and give preferential treatment to manufacturing to create jobs. The idea of a government that actually does something to, make lives better. Now, he didn't really have any details. In fact, I've got a whole ream of blank paper that, signifies his entire platform. But he was, in the rhetoric, he was talking about we're going to make healthcare better because there are problems with Obamacare. So we're going to make it all better. And everyone's going to be great and everyone's going to be covered. It's going to be terrific and all of that. No one expected pay or die. He was talking about raising taxes on the wealthy, saying, we need to pay for stuff. Where'd that go? Because Republicans are talking about more tax breaks. We're going to repeal Obamacare and give rich people more? Is that how we're going to get great coverage? The infrastructure plan that was supposed to happen last week that I must have missed was a huge handout to Wall Street. Where are the jobs? Where's the massive investment that's going to get rural communities back to work? Where's that at? So you look at this, and right now what's happened, and Trump's done this to himself because, look, these people in D.C., these politicos, they're really bright. They know how to play this game, and they know how to play it well. And they've really boxed Trump into this place where he's really the Republicans' toy puppet. He's going to have to back every piece of right-wing insanity, or the I word will continue to pop up. Because look, the Republicans, they're not stupid. They will throw him under the bus to save their own hide. Trust me on that. And Trump's certainly not tactical enough to play in the big pond. And it really shows. Anyway, today we're going to talk about a little bit of the Trump sanity, the economy, all kinds of stuff going to get to today. Thank goodness it's Monday, because we've got a great week ahead. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Propane Jane going to be here to talk about, 100% he's ready to testify. Right back after this.
All of my life I've searched for clarity. I have wrestled with two paths buried deep inside of me. I lost some rounds, been knocked around, felt my share of defeat. Yet somehow I've always managed to get back on my feet.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1904. That was the day that 18,000 workers in Chicago's stockyards went out on strike. Work in the stockyards was often brutal and dangerous. Thousands of workers toiled in the yards, many of them immigrants from Eastern Europe. They worked butchering and processing the hogs and cattle raised in the American West into meat for distribution by rail to consumers across the country. The industry gave Chicago the nickname Hog Butcher for the World. In 1904, the Amalgamated Meat Cutters Union organized a strike. The main demand was increased wages. The meatpacking companies were able to get scabs to cross the picket lines and act as strikebreakers. Most were African Americans and European immigrants. Many of these workers had not been organized by the union, which was dominated by the skilled German and Irish packing house workers. Novelist Upton Sinclair visited the stockyards during the strike to research conditions faced by the workers. In his famous novel, The Jungle, Sinclair gave a fictionalized account that captured the devastating impact of the scabs on the strike. He wrote, quote, "Such were the stockyards during the strike, while the unions watched in sullen despair, and the country clamored like a greedy child for its food, and the packers went grimly on their way. Each day they added new workers, and could be more stern with the old ones, could put them on piecework, and dismiss them if they did not keep pace." It was not until the 1930s, when the stockyard unions took seriously the task of organizing across race, ethnic, and skill lines, that they finally won a contract and gained the rights of union recognition. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Sanity for a change. The Rick Smith Show.
Back to the Rick Smith Show. This may actually help the Donald out a little bit. The news report is that the wife and the son have moved into the White House. The picture of him and Melania walking hand in hand, and the 11-year-old son sporting the Expert T-shirt arrived in Marine One at the White House Sunday evening, evidently moving in to the White House. And there's part of me that goes, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe the adults have said we need a stabilizing effect. Maybe we need to be able to control him a little bit better, and maybe having the wife and child there will help. I doubt it, but hey, it may, which is why we've asked our good friend Propane Jane to come give us some thoughts about, the week that was, and, what kind of insanity we've got to look forward to. Jane, thanks for taking time for us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me back.
So do you think this is going to be a good thing for the Donald to have the wife who smacks his hand away and the young child with them?
No, I think we're in neutral territory. I don't know that it makes the situation any better or necessarily worse. I don't get the sense that she is somebody who can be soothing to him or help modify his behavior. I'm in the camp that doesn't believe anyone can modify his behavior. or meet his emotional needs to the extent that he stops acting out. So we'll see. I hope that, just from a safety standpoint, that everything works out. But, from everything we've seen displayed by their interactions with each other, they look pretty tense. They're like 180 degrees opposite of what we saw from the Obamas for the last 8 years.
Exactly. No, and look, and I look at the Obamas, and they had outwardly, and maybe they had their problems behind closed doors, but they looked outwardly to be a very loving, affectionate, happy couple. These two, not so much.
Yeah, and I also think that just with Trump in general, I mean, you have a hard time seeing him just sort of even being emotionally connected to anyone. Even his children, the way he interacts with them, in a lot of ways is more like they're employees than they are members of his family, and that he has some intense affection for them. But I also think that that's an aspect of his personality and just the way that he comports himself in interpersonal relationships that comes through. And I also think that's why, as a country, we don't really, feel as endeared to him because he just doesn't engender that sense of kind of confidence and love and respect and honor.
That's a good point, which is why, again, I think back to, his comment that if Ivanka weren't his daughter, he'd be dating her, and going, that's just a really creepy kind of statement.
Yeah, it's very creepy, and I also think that just over the last couple of days, what we've seen is that the Republican Party is sort of walking on eggshells around Trump and his commentary about the Comey testimony, and so from a standpoint of like surrogates going on and forwarding his message, he is having to rely, pretty heavily on his children, because, I don't really get the sense that any of the establishment Republicans feel comfortable anymore really attaching themselves to the ways that he's behaving in response to this investigation. Yesterday on the Sunday shows, they didn't even have any major White House officials on the network to kind of, defend him against this really bad press that he's had this week. But again, I think that the only people who really can defend him at this point are his family.
Yeah. So no one drew the small straw this week?
No, it seems like it's getting harder and harder. And unfortunately, even when he's bringing his children, to speak up for him, I mean, Donald Jr. actually seems to confirm Comey's testimony, and actually is saying that his father thought that the Russia investigation, or that he hoped the Russia investigation would come to an end based on the contact that he had with Comey. So even his own family is sort of ratting him out, I think inadvertently, mostly because they're incompetent, and there really just isn't sort of a way to defend or excuse what they're actually doing behind the scenes.
Yep. No, they're not smart enough to know what the con is. I mean, that's the interesting part of all this.
Exactly. And so there is no one who can better represent Donald Trump, because, again, we're talking about Donald Trump, and we're talking about someone who makes a habit of being incorrigible and making very bad decisions and sticking by them. And I was just reading an article yesterday that said that Trump has given Reince Priebus until July 4th to clean up the mess in the White House.
Yeah, you might as well just quit now. You might as well just leave now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so laughable to me because the mess starts with him. I mean, it starts at the top, and everything is just trickling downhill. So it really doesn't matter. They're just basically rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic at this point.
Yeah, I mean, but I look at the two sons, and it's like, if they weren't rich, they'd be Beavis and Butthead. And maybe they should come up with a sequel, Beavis and Butthead Go to the White House.
They are the sequel to their father.
I think he's smarter than they are.
Which is sad, right?
I think they got all the recessive genes.
But I think another interesting aspect of this is like the privilege component, and how we are really dealing with people who have been isolated in a bubble, where they're surrounded by people that tell them that they are always competent, and that they are always making the best decisions, and they look the best, and they sound the best, and never really they were never really placed in the pressure cooker of kind of an environment where there's more public scrutiny. I mean, with their private business, they've been able to kind of operate under the radar. And so I think this is exposing for all of them, for the children and for their father, just how they've gotten through life without necessarily being competent, even likable people, but because they have been, afforded the trappings of generational wealth, they've been able to, continue to thrive as a family, even though they're not very smart or very responsible.
No, exactly. But here's the thing. I mean, do you find it as interesting as I do? You had Ivanka on Fox News yesterday saying that there's a level of viciousness that she wasn't expecting in D.C. And I got to be honest, had she not been the daughter of Donald J. Trump, who spent the last 6, 7, 8 years railing against President Obama, the birther stuff, the Muslim stuff, all of this, and you go, how do you not know that there's a level of viciousness when your father is and your family has been one of the main ones in pushing this kind of stuff? Or is this just a level of victimhood that we need to expect from these folks?
Yeah, I think it's both, actually. I really do honestly believe that, again, they are so insulated and used to being appeased and placated that this is, uncharacteristic for them. This is very unorthodox for them to be getting this widespread condemnation and for their narrative to not be changing. The perception of their administration. But at the same time, I also think that these are people who, again, are very narcissistically driven. And when you're dealing with somebody that has those character traits, it's almost impossible to get them to take responsibility for the things they are doing that are rubbing people the wrong way. Again, it always has to be that those other people are just misunderstanding it, or are just overreacting, or are just being mean or whatever, because they themselves don't see anything wrong with what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they really, I think, genuinely are just in a whole new world.
And I look at the statement that Eric Trump told to Sean Hannity, that said that, to him that Democrats aren't even people. He said it's so sad. Morality's just gone. Morals have flown out the window, and we deserve so much better than this as a country. He goes on to say they try and obstruct a great man. They try and obstruct his family. And I'm not sure how they try to obstruct his family, but great man. Okay, go on.
Yeah, but see, he's not your dad. I mean, part of the issue is that this is their father. This is the patriarch of their family.
Yep.
And so for them to admit that he is not a great man, or that there is something about him that's problematic, then that casts a shadow over the whole entire family. And so they have to maintain that he is this awesome figure. Just for their own self-identity and self-image, because
because they don't want to get written out of the will, Jane.
Exactly, and I was just about to say that. As his children, they are under a different set of sort of expectations for how to deal with him than the rest of us are. Yes, he can sort of tweet at us and lie and do all of the things that he's doing, and we don't necessarily have to live with him. We don't have to go to dinner with him. We're not hoping that we get an inheritance from him. And so the dynamic, I think, that has been set up in their family, when the person who is like the guardian, father, mother figure, and that person is narcissistic and antisocial and manipulative and abusive, the dynamic that's set up within that household and that family is, let's just do whatever we can to soothe and placate this person so that we can be safe. And so in their household, they've had to maintain this, oh, Dad, you're so great. You're so awesome. Of course, everything you do is perfect. And these people just don't know what they're talking about, in order to keep their own selves safe from retribution or persecution from him. And so they're just, trying to project their same mode of dealing with him onto the American public, but it's not going to work.
No, I mean, at this point, this administration is a train wreck. And you've even got somebody like Lindsey Graham, and I'm curious your thoughts on his statement of that Trump may be the first president to go down because he can't stop inappropriately talking about an investigation that, if he were just quiet, would clear him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. He is his own worst enemy. And he makes any situation way worse because, he is just going to continue to try to vindicate himself by, barking at people and by throwing out alternative facts, right? Even this thing with, like, the tape, who knows if there really are tapes, right? I mean, that's sort of the first piece of it. But the second piece is, okay, if you continue to say that there are tapes, why are you doing that? Why, and then why aren't you releasing them? And I think that it's making even the Republican members of Congress have to actually go, okay, well, we're trying to stick by you and we're trying to go along with what you're saying. And if you do have tapes, that would help us, actually, because then we could all look right because we have some proof of what you're saying. And the more and more that he doesn't verify anything that he's saying, and he becomes this, like, boy who cried wolf, I think it's just getting harder and harder to get away from the issue, because like we talked about Edgar Allan Poe and the Telltale Heart, Telltale Tweet, he is drawing more attention to the issue because in his own mind he is fearful of prosecution and being revealed as someone who's a traitor in many ways. Yeah. So I do think that he's going to continue to implicate himself. And I think Lindsey Graham is correct in saying that self-implication is such a distraction from any sort of legislative agenda or anything that he has planned for the country, that people are going to just get tired of the constant, poop storm that's going on every single day.
That's twice today that has been referenced. The first time I brought it up was with John McCain saying that his NATO speech was the big giant S storm, and now here it is again. So twice in less than an hour, this administration has been a giant pile of steaming storm. But here's the thing, and this is where you kind of look at all of this insanity, and you kind of look at all of this jumble, and there's part of me that goes, the genius of what is Trump is keeping us constantly in turmoil and constantly debating what is reality. And you think of any good propagandist, that's it. Just inundate you with nonsense and inundate you with all kinds of stuff, so eventually you turn off.
Yeah, I mean, he is hoping for, like the sheer level of exhaustion. And I think, sort of clinically, what we find is that people who, suffer from these personality disorders, that's what happens with their families, that ultimately, people just get tired of, like, the obfuscation and the deflection and the refusal to take responsibility. And so instead of, like, still trying to work with that person or stay engaged with that person, they just sort of distance themselves from that individual just to stop their own stress that's related to having to deal with somebody who's like that.
Right, which explains why Malia, kept the child back in New York. And I'd love to know who brokered that deal to make sure that they came back to the White House.
Yeah, because again, I think it looks bad. I don't know, what the historical facts are on, how many first families sort of have been long distance in ways. And I understand that, school has some aspect of that as well. But again, we are, coming off of 8 years of President Obama, where he very much, took his 2 young children out of school in Chicago and moved them to D.C. and, did sort of all of the obligatory things that happen when somebody is president. But I also think that, if you think about the parallels between their family and us as a country, that there are these sort of periods of time where you just need a break from everything that's happening and from the dysfunction. And I think ultimately, over time, that is going to result in people just throwing the whole administration out. Like, okay, anybody that's associated with this problem and this dysfunction, I'm just tired of y'all and I want y'all to go home. And that's the risk that the Republican Party is running right now, because they are becoming so off-putting as a brand for continuing to subject all of us to this emotional turmoil on a daily basis.
So, last question I've got for you then. When do and I've been saying this for a while, that it's going to be the Republicans who impeach him, and just to save their own hides. At which point do they say, you know what, you've been as useful to us as you can be. Now out to the curb with you, and we usher in the era of Mike Pence.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that myself because, at the outset, I sort of thought, and I think even you and I discussed this early on around the time of the inauguration, that sort of, that the Republican Party has certain legislative goals that they want to accomplish and that they need, a president to sign off on. And I think we sort of thought, okay, they'll try to get this Obamacare repeal through. They'll try to do this tax reform thing, and then get all of that out of the way. And then whatever happens. And if they have to get rid of him, they will. But over 4 months into this, I think what we're finding is that even their attempts to pass their legislative agenda are really failing in a lot of ways. I mean, again, like we've talked about over and over again, very few things have gone through the normal legislative process of making it through the House and Senate and then ending up on his desk to be signed. And I think that has everything to do with the distractions. It has everything to do with these temper tantrums, the Russia investigation, just the sheer level of incompetence again. And so that is making it harder, I think, for them to sort of just hurry up, get everything out, and get him out of there. And Pence, I think, is becoming more sullied. So it's not even a clear cut, okay, we can get rid of Trump and then put Pence there, because the more and more information comes out, he is implicated as well. So I just think that they're in between a rock and a hard place because Trump's approval continues to decrease. I mean, he's coming pretty close to crossing the 30% approval line. And I don't know, once it dips below 30, do they just go, okay, we have to just, cut bait? Or are they going to continue to be insistent? And I just do not envy them at all right now.
Oh no, I'm actually enjoying the fact that they're in this situation because here's the thing: they can't get out of their own way, and they've got a leader who can't get out of his own way. So what you're seeing is just total and absolute dysfunction. But here's the thing: the really horrible stuff that I really expected to be done by now, like pay or die health insurance, more tax cuts for the wealthy, the end of overtime, the end of child labor laws, the end of the 20th century, if you will. That hasn't happened yet. They're still working on it. Trust me, they're working on it, but it hasn't happened yet as I thought it would have.
Yeah, yeah. And, my most recent piece that I wrote for Share Blue that just came out on Sunday is called I Don't Trust Donald Trump or the Republican Party, and I'm Not Alone. And the basic gist there is that, again, as this Russia investigation drags on, the public is becoming more and more distrustful of the party in general, and the whole establishment looks bad because they are aiding and abetting this man. And so anything they try to do now is sullied by that. And their legislative agenda, the more time that ticks off of the clock, it becomes even more impotent, I think, because they look like people you can't trust and like people who are only going to make bad decisions for us.
Yeah, I mean, they're people I never trusted, but here's the thing, and this is here's my concern. My concern is while soiling their own brand, while burning their own house to the ground, they end up earthing the entire system, and we end up in chaos. And at the end of it, the guy who helped push us in this direction, Vladimir Putin's laughing his what off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, because that I think was the ultimate goal, was to divide and conquer. But I think that from the ashes, we'll have to rise a movement that actually repairs and fixes a lot of the disaster that happened. And so I do think that it's kind of directly proportionate that the worse off things are with them in power, the more apt people are to want to stand up and get them out of office. So we have to just continue to inform people of how disastrous this agenda is. And we also have to continue to register our level of distrust and disapproval of what's happening, so that we can mobilize people to get some new blood in Congress, and get some of these things prosecuted, and also hopefully, get to the bottom of what Trump was doing with Russia.
Yep. Or the people around him, because I don't know that Trump and Putin were holding hands, but it just seems a lot of his advisors and the people around him were married up to the oligarchs and the big money and bought off. It just and look, to me, the Russian involvement is not just on the Trump side either. I mean, you look a lot of the left media in this country, they're funded by Sputnik Radio and by RT and all of these Russian organizations. I wanted to get to the bottom of the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, this is about our sovereignty as a nation, and it really is past the point of Democrat, Republican, Independent. We are defending ourselves against enemies, foreign and domestic, and we really have to think about it that way. Because this is definitely an all-out assault on both sides of the political spectrum, and ultimately it's meant to diminish our role in the world and destabilize us internally, and we just can't let that happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're on the way to being able to break out the Mission Accomplished banner, which is why it's great having you on. I appreciate it, Jane. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to talking to you again.
All right, you too. Have a great week.
As well as you. Always great talking to our friend Propane Jane. Again, if you want to check out her stuff, we'll get a link at thericksmithshow.com, and you can take a look at it. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. We're on a road to nowhere.
Sanity and rational thought back to America. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. In 1981, the Los Angeles Dodgers dropped the first 2 games of the World Series to their rivals, the New York Yankees. The Dodgers would come roaring back, sweeping the next 4 games, and so close the curtain on one of the strangest seasons in baseball history. The strangeness of the season began on this day in labor history. This was the first day of a strike that would last until August 9th. Nearly a third of all games were canceled. The reason for the strike was free agency. the players had won the right to become free agents a year after their contracts ended. Before this change, owners could renew players' contracts year after year, effectively stopping players from testing their market value with other teams. Determined to reverse the gains won by the players' union, owners brought in Roy Graby as a negotiator. Graby had a tough reputation for representing management for General Electric and for Pan American World Airlines. He took that same hard-nosed approach to the baseball bargaining table. The owners wanted the right to receive a player of comparable value for any player lost to free agency. This would effectively discourage teams from signing free agents if they had to give up another valuable player in return. The players' union understood this was a tactic to undermine free agency. Many also saw it as an attempt to break the players' union. Sports Illustrated magazine declared it the walkout owners provoked. Finally, the two sides agreed to a compromise that kept the practice of free agency intact. In a controversial decision, baseball owners decided to split the season into two. The teams with the best records from each half of the strike-divided season went to the playoffs. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
The most important issues of the day. This is The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So, big fundraiser on Sunday for Republican Congressman in New Jersey, Tom MacArthur, who one of the guys who right front and center in passing the destruction of the Affordable Care Act with their repeal plan. Now, raised more than $800,000 at a closed event at Trump's his golf club. And my first thought was, of the $800,000, I wonder how much went to the house. I wonder how much the Donald put in his pocket. Because look, he's doing a great salesman gig. He crashed a wedding. He also crashed an 8th grade graduation. And my thought was, what group of 8th graders can afford to have their graduation at the Trump Country Club? Kind of a thought. Anyway, here to talk about what's going on around the world and in Washington, D.C., Victoria Jones, Talk Media News. Victoria, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you very much.
So how much do you think went to the house? Of $800,000, how much do you think he had to pay to have the event there at Trump's golf course?
I don't know. I think you ought to talk to Eric.
He'd probably tell me. He's probably not smart enough not to.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it works.
Well, it works like this. We'll have an event, and you'll pay us a whole bunch of money, and and we won't tell anybody. We'll lie about it, especially the charities. And I always love that about charities. They have these events, and a whole bunch of people are, feeding at the trough.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What's going on? I understand the big unveiling of a manufacturing plan this week. Will it be as good as the unveiling of the Infrastructure Week plan last week?
Well, there's a couple of things going on this week. We've got the apprenticeship plan, which is not the apprentice, the apprenticeship plan, and then we've got the manufacturing plan. I don't think you're going to like the manufacturing plan. This is trimming regulations, worker safety and labor rules.
Nice.
This is the Commerce Department's regulations hit list recommendations following more than 3 months of study and consultation with industry on ways to streamline regulations and ease burdens on manufacturing firms. Now, according to a Trump administration official with knowledge of the recommendations, the EPA's complex permitting rules will be a key focus. There are 171 public comments submitted by companies and industry groups after a strong hint to priorities for commerce's streamlining efforts. So the industry groups are complaining that EPA air quality permit rules for new facilities are often redundant. That's one thing. So they should reject a planned tightening of ozone rules. They say that would expose them to increased permitting hurdles for new facilities. Then the National Association of Manufacturers says the EPA's review requirements for new sources of emissions can add a lot of money and costs. Also, construction groups are complaining, so are iron foundries, an incoming OSHA rule reducing by 80% the amount of crystalline silica dust that can be inhaled. It's on construction sites, and it can cause lung cancer, according to OSHA. But industry groups say if you reduce it to those levels, it'll be prohibitively expensive.
Well, look, we're making lung cancer great again. And look, every bit of the regulatory reform, if you will, is about making workers work in dangerous, desperate conditions. It's not surprising. And, when I saw this stuff coming out, I'm going, well, it's kind of what you expected from the Chamber of Commerce and the Heritage Foundation. Again, I don't know that Trump has any dealings with this stuff, but it's been the wet dream list of the corporatists for a very long time to basically undo the entire 20th century of labor restrictions.
There's another one you might like.
Hit me.
Well, there's also beryllium. But then manufacturing groups, including auto parts makers, have targeted labor rules that make it easier for unions to organize workers, expand the number of employees eligible for overtime, and govern the reporting of workplace injuries.
Okay. The way you made that sound, and I made it easier for labor unions. They're gutting the regulations, or they're proposing regulations. They're targeting those labor rules. Because it's so easy to join and form unions in this country with a private sector density of about 6.5%. Yeah, it's so easy today with a year-long process of harassment and intimidation and closed-door meetings and illegal firings and a National Labor Relations Board that's now ineffectual. Yeah, it's so easy that we've got to go and release these corporations from that onerous burden of the prospect of possibly joining a union. I get it.
So, yeah, I hated to start your week that way.
Well, it is what we were expecting. And look, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, they want to do away with overtime. Eventually, they'll want to do away with minimum wage, because over the weekend, I got a ton of email from right-wingers going, the minimum wage is ridiculous. We shouldn't have it at all. It's nuts.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got this the Paul Bot movement, the Ayn Rands, all of those folks saying, the free market, the invisible hand. They believe in invisible stuff because, the idea that wages are going to go up if you have no regulations is kind of insane, but they believe in mythical, imaginary things. So if you believe in imaginary things, that might work.
Do they believe in unicorns?
They do.
They do?
Pink, fluffy unicorns.
I'm with them.
Dancing on rainbows.
I'm with them. I'm one.
All right, so let's move on. I understand two attorney generals, Maryland and D.C., say they're gonna sue the president. What are they suing for?
Emoluments. Constitutional oaths. They say that he's violated anti-corruption clauses in the Constitution. Things that they're alleging. Of course, that's not in their state, but nevertheless,
doubled it.
And of course, this is the first lawsuit brought by government entities. There was one brought by Crew, and that didn't go anywhere. But they're saying that he chose to retain ownership of his company when he became president. But the AGs say that Eric Trump, who took over the companies, said the president will continue to receive regular updates about the company's financial health. And they say that they also say, look, one of the first steps is going to be to demand through discovery copies of Trump's personal tax returns, because they need to gauge the extent of his foreign business dealings.
I think that's important. But here's the thing. My question then becomes, if he's taking daily briefings on how his business is doing, is he taking daily briefings on how the country is doing?
Well, actually, no, he is getting his presidential daily briefings.
Really?
Yes, apparently he's very interested. Well, I mean, they come, in one pages with bullets and maps and graphs and not very much print.
Is anything the color?
Yes, probably.
Okay.
But he's very interested. He likes getting the secret intelligence. But there have been a couple of stories about this. There was one from somebody I follow on Twitter who's a former NSA analyst, and then there was a Wall Street Journal story a month later in February saying that the NSA decided way back in January that they were not going to give him all the intelligence.
Duh.
Because they didn't trust him not to leak it.
Of course not. In fact, what you want to do then is give him all the wrong information so that when he does blab it out, you kind of work it as a countermeasure.
I don't know if they went that far.
They probably should, because look, what's that? Loose lips sink ships. When your leader is the guy with the loose lips, you kind of got a problem.
Well, they already had that issue with the Russians in the Oval Office meeting.
Yeah, I know. It's scary, scary stuff, and it's only going to get worse. Only going to get worse. Big week ahead, though. Tomorrow, the big day, Jeff Sessions. I mean, last week, the Comey thing and all of that, every week seems to be building and building to that, impeachment thing that I think is eventually going to happen.
Yes, and by the way, Newt Gingrich, he is saying that it's time to rethink the special counsel, Robert Mueller.
I think it's time to reconsider listening to anything Newt Gingrich has to say.
Well, he says that Republicans are delusional if they think the special counsel is going to be fair, because he says that, James Comey manipulated the Russia probe in order to get the appointment of a special counsel, so that they need to get rid of the special counsel. Now, he seems to have missed out the bit that James Comey did not appoint the special counsel. Rod Rosenstein appointed the special counsel. So unless James Comey was somehow in cahoots with the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein,
who wrote the memo to fire him, by the way.
Right. There's a gap in the logic there. But anyway, Attorney General Jeff Sessions testifies tomorrow before the Senate Intelligence Committee. It's not clear whether it's going to be open or closed testimony. Everybody who I know wants to watch it, wants it to be open.
That's me.
It's me.
I want to see it. I want to see him grilled, and he should be. Look, I want to know about how many meetings he had. Was it 2? Was it 3? Was it 20 that we don't know about? What did you do? When did you do it? And why didn't you tell us about it? And who at the Department of Justice gave him permission to go, oh, well, I'm not going to mention any of that.
And what role did he play in firing James Comey?
And why did he leave the room?
Yeah, and what did he say to Comey when Comey went to him afterwards and said, I don't want to meet with Trump anymore privately?
Yeah, well, I think that it should all be. This is that transparency thing that I think so very important. And finally, with the big week with the economy, I saw this morning Donald tweeted out the great job numbers. Just a quick reminder for the average for 2016, 187,000 jobs were created per month. During the Trump couple of months here, 162,000 jobs created. So less. Even though the messaging is more, it's actually less. But we're going to bring some of those jobs home by doing apprenticeships, and I'm all in favor of that.
Yes, we're going to do apprenticeships. Now, the details on this are very sparse. Actually, they're so sparse we don't know what they are. But nevertheless, that is President Trump. This is Apprenticeship Week with the Trump administration, and part of it is so that people don't have 4 years of college debt,
right?
And part of it is that this is just generally a good idea. So there are going to be a number of events this week with the Trump administration. He's going to a technical college in Wisconsin tomorrow. There's going to be events at the White House. Many employers say they can't find workers with the necessary skills. And yes, now the Center for American Progress says it's great, but if you can't access childcare to get there and you can't partner to develop good programs, it's hard to see how you get to the goal that the president's laid out. Also, there are cuts in the budget to the Labor Department, but the apprenticeship part has not been cut.
And that's a good thing. And for me, I got to wonder if there are going to be any unions there at all, since they do run the best apprenticeship programs in the country. Victoria, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Always great. Victoria Jones, Talk Media News. Quick break. Right back.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to Win, Workers Independent News, a diversified media enterprises production. I'm Doug Cunningham. Novato Healthcare Center Nursing Home is under an NLRB order to rehire and pay tens of thousands of dollars in back pay to 5 workers in California. They were organizing a local of the National Union of Healthcare Workers, NUHW, when they were fired just 2 days before an NLRB union representation election. Despite the firings and an intense anti-union campaign, the workers at Novato won their election in 2015, but they have yet to win their first collective bargaining contract. Richard Draper is an NUHW organizer.
These are just very remarkable people who take care of some of the most vulnerable people in our society, are wanting to just be treated with respect. That's why they decided to join our union. They don't make a lot of money, and these folks stay at this facility because they care about these residents. And for the employer to violate their rights, to treat them how they have, is just pretty despicable.
Draper says these workers had to endure an intimidation campaign from Novato management simply to exercise their legal rights to form a union.
The facility became a real war zone for almost 2 months during the organizing campaign. This is another example of where at some point in our country we need to focus on strengthening labor laws, especially the laws that protect workers when they act collectively, because it's not strong enough. The penalties for employers should be much more severe because there's not enough fight to the law. Too many employers violate it.
Novato has appealed the NLRB ruling reinstating the fired workers, but Draper says these workers will prevail in asserting their legal rights to organize.
For WIN, I'm Joanne Powers. Members of the nation's largest union of charter school educators announced Friday that they have voted overwhelmingly to merge with the Chicago Teachers Union. The Chicago Alliance of Charter Teachers and Staff, Local 4343 of the American Federation of Teachers, represents 1,000 teachers at 32 of the city's charter schools. CTU's 30,000 members are expected to vote this fall. Chris Barrand is president of Local 4343.
Our vote represents the fact that charter teachers are educators of the public. We face the same challenges that district schools face: budget cuts, privatization, lack of accountability, and